the notes or new note sheet today. Are there any questions over there? All right. What we're doing today is more factoring. We're continuing going over factoring. And when we look at these problems here, the first thing we need to do is factor out a greatest common factor. Is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? (56 divided by 8 is? 8 is the greatest common factor. So we can factor it out of all three terms. Or really, we're dividing each term by 8. So 8x squared divided by 8 would leave us with x squared. Negative 56 divided by 8 would be negative 7x. And 48 divided by 8 would be plus 6. Now that we have no other greatest common factors, we did actually find the greatest common factor, we can move on to step number 2. Our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Now to find the sign, if the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. Here it is positive, so the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term, which would be negative and negative. Now we need to find the factors of the first and third term. Well, the factors of x squared are x and x. Since there's not a number in front of it besides 1, we just have x and x. Now we need to find the factors of 6. Well, the factors of 6 are 1 and 6 are 2 and 3. So we'll use 2 and 3 first. And then we need to check it. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 3x minus 2x is negative 5x. Is that the middle term we wanted? No. So 1 and 6. We could switch it, but because x and x are just both 1, it's actually not going to change it if we flip it. So we'll have to try 1 and 6. And if we do this with 1 and 6, x times negative 6 would be negative 6x. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 6x minus x is negative 7x. Is that the middle term we wanted? So this would be it completely factored. Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? We ready for the next one? Let's look at the next one here. 14x squared plus 31x plus 15. Is there a greatest common factor? No. So we move on to step number 2, our two sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. When we find the sign, if the third term's positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, then the signs are opposite. Well, here the third term's positive, so the signs will be the same and match the sign of the middle term, which is also plus. So we'd have plus and plus. Now we need the factors of the first and third term. Well, the first term would give us x and x, but we do need to find the factors of 14. Now this would be 1 and 14 or 2 and 7. And then we also need the factors of 15, which is 1 and 15 or 3 and 5. So, which factors of 14 do we want to try first? 2 and 7. Which factors of 15 do we want to try first? 3 and 5. Which one do we want to put first? 5. And the last thing we need to do is to check. 2x times 5 is 10x. 3 times 7x is plus. And 10x plus 21x is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. Any other questions on this one here? Are we ready for the next one? Two x squared minus 7x plus 5. Is there a greatest common factor? No. So we move on to step 2, our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Right, because the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. So we'd have minus and minus, or negative and negative. So we will have x and x, because our 2x squared, the x squared would be x and x. Factors of 2 are 1 and 2, so we need to put the 2 in front of one of the x's, bless you. We can just leave it like that. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and that's the only one. So where do we put the 5, and where are we going to put the 1? 5 here, 1 there. And the last thing we need to do is check. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. Negative 1 times x is negative x, which gives us negative 11x. We can switch the 5 and 1. Five and 1. And again, we're going to check it. 2x times negative 1 is negative 2x. Negative 5 times x is negative 5x, which gives us negative 7x. Is that what we wanted? Questions on this here? Questions on anything we've done so far? We ready for the next one? Is there a greatest common factor? No. So we can go to our 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Our third term is positive, so the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. So we'd have minus and minus. Factors of the first term and third term, well, we would indeed have x and x. Factors of 3 are 1 and 3, so we really just need to put a 3 in front of one of the x's. First one. We could have put it in front of the second or the first. Either will work. Well, factors of 8 are 1 and 8, 2 and 4. Where do you want to put the 2? Now we need to see if this is the correct setup. 3x times negative 4 is negative 12x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 12x minus 2x is that the correct middle term we wanted? Questions on this here? Are you ready for the next one? How do we feel about most of these here? So let's do this one here, then we'll skip a few. So there is no greatest common factor, correct? So 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So one is positive, one is negative. Factors of the first and third term. Factors of 4x squared and factors of 5. So we'll have x and x. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4, or which one do we want to try first? 2 and 2. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and that's the only one, so we just need to plug them in. 5 in the second. And the last thing we need to do is to check. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. 1 times 2x is plus 2x, which gives us negative 8x. With changing the 1 and 5, I mean, it'll change the answer, but it will just make it go from negative to positive 8x. Does that make a little confused on that?
No, I got it. I just can't see. Sorry.
You're good.
Do we have to do 1 and 4?
So we're going to have to do 1 and 4, yes. Because especially if the numbers in front of x are the exact same number, like we had here, switching the 1 and 5 won't do anything. It won't give us a different answer. It's just going to change it from positive to negative or negative to positive. Now the question is, where do we want to put the 4? So we check this here. X times negative 5 is negative 5x. 1 times 4x is plus 4x. Negative 5x plus 4x is negative x. So what can we do next?
Do we have to change the 4 and the 1?
We can't. Well, yes. We can change the 4 and 1. Because we can change the 1 and 4 or the 1 and 5. So if we switch the 4 and 1, give us 4x and x. 4x times negative 5 is negative 20x. 1 times x is plus x, which gives us negative 19x. Is that what we wanted? Questions on this here? We feel comfortable with this here. Actually, I take that back. I do want to look at this one here. Huh? It doesn't have a greatest common factor because of the 1x. But there is something interesting about how this does work. Now, third term is, if the third term is negative, the signs are. So one of them is going to be negative, one of them is going to be positive. Now we do need to find the factors of the first and third term. Since it is 6x squared, we will have x and x. Now, I'm going to go on and just use 2 and 3. And I'm doing this to kind of make a point. And 12 is 1 and 6, 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. Now, I'm going to pick some of these here. We'll look at them. I wouldn't write them down. Because we said there was no greatest common factor to begin with, yes? So could there be a greatest common factor in either set of parentheses? Because if there was, then we could factor it out. And if we could factor it out, it means there had to be one to begin with. Because this 3x plus 12, greatest common factor of 3, would mean I could pull that 3 out to the front. Well, if we could pull it out to the front, it means there had to be one here. So what that means for us is, can the 12 go with the 3x? No, if there's not a greatest common factor to begin with, or if we've already pulled it out, there can't be one showing up later. So the 3x and 12 can't go together. Now, if we did check this, 2 times 12x is 24x. 1 times 3x is negative 3x, which gives us a positive 21x. Well, that's not what we want. Now, if I switched it and said 12 and 1, would this work? Well, here we have 2x and 12, yes? They have a greatest common factor of 2. That doesn't work. And if we did check it, 2x times 1 is 2x. Negative 12 times 3x is negative 36x, which gives us negative 34x. It doesn't work. So that's telling us that 12 and 1 don't work. We could try 2 and 6. Well, 2x and 2 has a greatest common factor of 3x and 6 has a greatest common factor of. Since these have greatest common factors, they don't work. If we did check it, 2x times 6 is 12x. Negative 2 times 3x is negative 6x, which does give us 6x. So even if we didn't see the greatest common factor, checking it still tells us this doesn't work. If we switched it the other way, well, 3x plus 2 doesn't have a greatest common factor. What about 2x minus 6? It has a greatest common factor of 2. It's not going to work. Four and 3. 2x minus 4, 3x plus 3. Is there a greatest common factor between these? Yeah. And if we did check this here, we would get 6x minus 12x, which is negative 6x. So we do have a greatest common factor. And if we did check it, it doesn't work. Now if I switch it, 2x minus 3, is there a greatest common factor? 3x plus 4. No. Now, it's not a guarantee that it'll work, but it could. Because since it doesn't have a greatest common factor in either one, and the original one didn't, or if it did, we pulled it out, there shouldn't be another one there, then there's a chance that this could work. Now, if we check this, 2x times 4 is 8x. Negative 3 times 3x is negative 9x. And 8x minus 9x is negative x. Is that the one we wanted? No, but it is close, yes? We got the right number but wrong sign, so we just need to flip the signs. Because if we flip the signs, 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. 3 times 3x is plus 9x, giving us just positive 1x. So the greatest common factor piece, the fact that if we pull it out and there shouldn't be any left, or there wasn't one to begin with, there shouldn't be one in either set of parentheses. And if you notice that no matter how you set it up, you still keep getting a greatest common factor, look back at the original, and there might be one there that you missed. But let's look at the next ones here. Now, if we look at this here, is there a greatest common factor between these three terms? No. There's not a number that we can divide into 4, 8, and 5. But what is different about this one that the other ones didn't have? There's one big difference. It has a negative in front of the 4, 4x squared, yes? And if the term in front of our x squared is negative, we need to factor that negative out. If there is another number in common, we will factor it out as well. But we need to get rid of this negative 1 in front of the 4x squared. We need to get rid of the negative. And what we'll do is we will divide or factor a negative 1 out of every single term. Now the 4x squared will still be there. Our 8x will still be there, and the 5 will still be there. But when I divide the negative 4 by negative 1, it becomes positive 4. When I divide negative 8 by negative 1, it becomes positive 8. And when we divide 5 by negative 1, it becomes negative. And everything else stays the same. Now, we don't necessarily have to write the 1. We can just write the negative sign. That will do the same thing. But if you want, we can still write it as negative 1. Either way works. But from here, all the rest of the steps work. As our second step, we have 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Step number 3, to find the signs. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. One's going to be positive, one is going to be negative. If the third term had been positive, the signs would have been the same. And it brings us to our fourth step, finding the factors of the first and third terms. Part of the factors of the first term would be x and x. And we do need to find the factors of 4, which we found several times today, which is 1 and 4 or 2 and 2. Which one do we want to try first? 2 and 2. Factors of 5 are 1 and 5. Which one do we want to put first? And we can put 5 second. And the last thing, possibly, and the last thing we need to do is check. 2x times negative 5 is negative 10x. 1 times 2x is plus 2x. And this gives us a negative 8x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Because since we took the negative out, we're not looking back at this one. We're looking back at this one here. So we need to flip the signs. We have plus, minus, which when we checked it now would be that's 10x, minus 2x, which is 8x. Thank you. And that's it there. We do need the negative sign because it is a part of the problem. It is our greatest common factor. But it does help us solving this here because if we had left it, it actually doesn't affect steps 1, 2, or 3. It mainly affects step number 4 because our negative 4 in front of the x squared, we have to find the factors of it, which would have been negative 1 times 4 or 1 times negative 4. Or negative 2 times 2, or 2 times negative 2. We have to adjust for that negative sign. Now, the negative sign doesn't affect the 5 in this step here, because step 3 took care of that step. When we did the opposite signs, it took care of that, yes.
So does that mean
It wouldn't be really hard, it would just be making sure to keep that in mind. Does that make sense? And it's not that it's wrong, it's not that it's incorrect. I just find it easier to just pull that negative out and then treat it the same as the rest than trying to have to remember that if there's a negative, we do have to take the negative factors and go with that there. Because, I mean, here, it did double the number of factors technically. But when we get bigger numbers and we keep getting more and more, especially with the positive negatives, it does make it a little more challenging. But it is possible. Because if we left it, we would either say that it's negative 2x plus 1 times 2x plus 5, or 2x minus 1 times negative 2x minus 5. It'd be one of these two here. And both of them work. Because if we check the top one, I'm going to check it all the way out. Negative 2x times 2x would be negative 4x squared. Negative 2x times 5 would be negative 10x. 1 times 2x is plus 2x. And 1 times 5 would be plus 5, which would indeed give us negative 4x squared minus 8x plus 5, which is the original problem we started with. This other one here, 2x times negative 2x is negative 4x squared. 2x times negative 5 would be negative 10x. Negative 1 times 2x is plus 2x. And negative 1 times negative 5 is plus 5, which gives us negative 4x squared minus 8x plus 5. So they are the same thing, it's just how we apply that negative back in. Any one of these three is correct. I think it might be a little bit easier just to take the negative out and not worry about it. Questions on this here? Let's look at this one here. Is there a greatest common factor? No. But we can still pull that negative 1 out, which will turn it from negative 9x squared to positive 9x squared. Turn it from negative 3x to positive 3x. And turn it from positive 2 to negative 2. Since we have factored everything out, 2 sets of parentheses with 3 spaces. Find the sign. If the third term is positive, the signs are the same and they match the sign of the middle term. If the third term is negative, the signs are opposite. So 1 is positive, 1 is negative. 9x squared, well, the factors of x squared are x and x. Factors of 9 are 1 and 9 or 3 and 3. Which one do we want to try first? 3 and 3. Factors of 2 are, where do we want to put the 1? Where do we want to put the 2? 1 in the second. And then we will check this. 3x times negative 1 is negative 3x. 2 times 3x is plus 6x, which gives us a positive 3x. Is that the middle term we wanted? Yes. So that's it. Questions on this here? Huh? Yes. I heard doctor. Questions on this here? Is having the first term be negative a big change for this? I mean, yes and no. Because it adds the step that we do have to take that negative out with it, the greatest common factor. But besides that, after we do that, the rest of the steps are the same. We did have 2 more, but I'm going to let y'all have the rest of the time to work on the assignment. 7 problems, 11 through 23 on.